Okay, so hello and welcome back. What we want to look at now is nominal and effective interest rates. Nominal and effective interest rates. And I'm going to give you a bit of nominal and effective interest. Okay? Okay. So firstly, let's talk about what the nominal rate is. Well, this will be considered the rate as stated. It is the rate as stated, right? Um, That is the rate as is. It is the rate that is stated that you see that is given. For example, we tell you it is at a rate of 12%. It is at a rate of 12%. And that 12% is compounded annually or monthly or so forth. But the problem here is it's given 12%, and so you don't know what it looks like over a period of time. You don't know what it looks like over a period of time. So if, for example, I just want to take you back to what compounded means. It means we look at it as a percentage of the closing balance each time. If you have an investment and that investment makes, you invest 100,000, you gain 10% on it the first month, which is 10,000, and now you have 110,000 in the investment. 10% of that is 11,000, and so you add 11,000 to it. And so each time we're adding a percentage of the closing balance. Now, if you look at it over a period of time, you must remember that the total interest earned will have a different percentage. And that's really what we're interested in if we talk about the effective rate over a period of time. So remember, the nominal rate is the rate that is as it is stated, as it's given. And I also want to add to that, and I want to say that it is not necessarily the rate, if it's stated, not necessarily adjusted for compounding. And that's what we want to add. Not necessarily adjusted for compounding. And so if I were to talk about an example, let's talk about savings, right? And this is taking a step away from interest and annuities and finance, but let's just talk about getting this understanding right of what I mean by effective. I'm going to say that each month I save 100 rand. Ooh, this VE, save 100 rand each month, right? Each month I save 100 rands. Now, after 12 months, how much did I save? After 12 months, how much did I save? Well, I saved 100 multiplied by 12, and so after 12 months I will have 1200 rand or 1200 rand saved. Now, what I'm getting at here is that my effective savings for the year, I will call that my effective savings for the year, what it looks like after a period of time. Okay, so let's consider this. You save each month, whether you save 100 and some months you save 50 and others, etc. The idea is, let's look at the total, and the total will give me an idea of the effective savings that was accrued or gained after a period of time. If I were to consider something else, for example, if I go back and I consider I'm going to gain a percentage at the end of each month, but it's not necessarily giving me a bigger picture as to what I've gained over a full year. And that's what we're really interested in when we start looking at the effective rate. Now, I'm going to introduce one more thing. I'm going to give you a definition of a nominal interest rate for the sake of our calculations. Nominal interest rate, and this will be related to our calculations. I want you to write this down, make a note in your book, and say that a rate, or make it an interest rate, my apologies, an interest rate is considered nominal if the interest is credited in a unit other than the basic unit. Now, what is the basic unit? I want to say that that is actually a year. That's actually a year. So an interest rate is considered nominal if the interest is credited in a unit other than the basic unit. Wow, loads of words. What exactly does that mean? Well, what we're really interested in over here is talking about how is the interest compounded. How is the interest compounded? And let's explain that. Let's focus on that. How is the interest compounded? Okay? If I were to answer this question, I'm going to say the following. Well, sometimes we get interest compounded monthly. Sometimes we get the interest compounded quarterly. That means every 3 months of the year. Okay? Sometimes it is compounded annually. Now, to help you understand this, it means we consider the interest charged on the closing balance at the end of each month. Okay, so that's the big thing here. Here it's going to be the end of each quarter. End of the quarter. And so we're not interested. Let's say, for example, you take out a loan and we're going to compound the interest quarterly. So if you pay at the end of January, end of February, end of March, and you get a sum, right? The interest will be charged on your closing balance at the end of March. So even if you didn't pay at the end of January or February, it doesn't really matter because we're not compounding the interest monthly, we're compounding the interest quarterly. So we care about what your closing balance is at the end of the quarter. Okay, so let's go back here. A nominal interest rate, it is the rate that is stated, and we also consider it nominal if it is credited in other than the basic unit. If I tell you the interest is compounded quarterly, monthly, etc., or I charge you interest in other than a year, then I'm going to consider that a nominal interest rate. Secondly, we need to consider how is the interest compounded. It could be compounded monthly, and that really means that we care about the closing balance at the end of the month before we charge you interest. If it is compounded quarterly, we care about the closing balance as to what it looks like at the end of the quarter before we charge you interest. And then if we compound interest annually, it means we're looking at the closing balance at the end of the year. Before charging you interest, right? So the last thing I want to do now is I want to talk about the effect. Remember that I is always a percentage, right? So that's a given, right? And what I want to consider now is I want to take the following. I want to draw up a table and talk about the effect of I and N, depending on how we compound things, right? Okay, so I'm going to compound okay, just going to extend this for the sake of extending it. Okay, so let's fill this in. Let's get some black headers over there, and I'm going to say that's going to be I, and this is going to be N. And I'm going to assume that N is generally years, right? Right. And this is going to be the effect that a question has when things are compounded on your formula. Okay, so let's see. Remember, I is always a percentage. It is stated usually as a per annum percentage. And this is also the number of years, and we're going to look at how we compound it and how it affects the periods. Okay. Okay, so let me start here. If something is compounded monthly, I'm going to say this is quarterly. And this is, you do the exact thing to I and n in your formula, right? I'm going to say this, it's half yearly. And then let's add one, even every second year. If you compound the interest every second year, what is going to happen to each of these? Well, the simple answer is you need to look at how many months are in a year, and that's exactly what you're going to do to I. And remember, the interest rate is already considered a percentage, so if it's 0.12, if it's 12%, then whatever you're going to do year monthly is you're still going to divide it by 12. So remember that this will become I over 12. This will be n. Remember, now n is a number of years, but you're compounding per month. So the number of months, that will be the total that we're interested in. Always divide I, and then I always multiply n by 12. Okay, quarterly, how many quarters are there in a year? Well, you'll say, Mad, there are 4 quarters, and so that's going to be I divided by 4. And n is the number of years, but now we're interested in the number of quarters because that will be the number of periods in which we find the interest charged or paid, right? And so it's going to be n multiplied by 4. Okay, half yearly. How many half years are there in 1 year? Oh, wow, there's 2 half years. Okay, so that means I need to find out that interest will be charged, it will be I over 2, right? And that's what I'm looking at. And then I'm going to say it's n multiplied by 2 because now I'm working with 1 year, and for every year I have two half years. Now the big question is every second year. What do we do there? In other words, when I look at this, our period that we are interested in over here is a 2-year period. The question you need to ask now is how many 2-year periods fit into 1 year? Mind blown? No, it shouldn't be, because only half of a 2-year period is in 1 year. So that means I've got to take I and I got to divide it by a half. Okay, and then I've got to do the same to n because I'm not interested in one full 2-year period, but rather I'm interested in half-year period. So it's going to be n multiplied by a half. And this gives you an idea. When you go back to your formula and it starts speaking about things being compounded monthly, only thing you need to remember is I must be divided by 12 while n must be multiplied by 12 to get the total number of months that we are interested in calculating the interest for, or the interest is being paid or charged for. Quarterly, I divided by 4. Similarly, n multiplied by 4. Half yearly, 2 half years in a year, so that's why I divide I by 2 and I multiply n by 2. Similarly, over year, how many 2-year periods are in 1 year? Only a half of a 2-year period is in 1 year. So I say I divided by a half and n multiplied by a half. Look at this table, make a note, and you'll get to see what is happening. Okay, and then we'll start looking at some more examples where we apply the interest being compounded quarterly, annually, and so forth.